Good morning, I assume, to His Excellency Mr. Pawel Herczynski. Warm greetings to you from Hanoi. How's it going in Europe? Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you well. I hope you can hear me well as well. Everything is fine.
Yes, I certainly can hear you very well. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, Excellencies, welcome to the keynote session of the South China Sea Conference. This is the 13th time we, the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, hold this international scientific conference on the South China Sea. We are extremely delighted to welcome Excellency Mr. Pawel Herczynski, the EU Managing Director for Common Security and Defense Policy and Crisis Response, to join us on a keynote session of today's conference. The EU is a very important and key partner of ASEAN. It is an important player in the Indo-Pacific. It is a staunch supporter of multilateralism and of the rules-based international system. The EU also has great interest in an open, peaceful, and connected South China Sea, as well as Indo-Pacific. So we are very joyful to welcome Excellency Mr. Pawel Herczynski today to share his view and his vision of the Indo-Pacific that is cooperative, connected, and the EU roles in there. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome you again, Excellency, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your very kind words. And I'm really grateful to the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam for yet again hosting this very important conference. Of course, it is a great pleasure for me to address you from the headquarters of the European Union here in Brussels. Despite all the disruptions brought by the COVID pandemic, I'm particularly happy that the European Union can maintain our tradition of addressing the South China Sea Conference, an important annual event, year after year. I know you have already had a very long and full day behind you, those colleagues who are in Hanoi, and you must be looking forward to the cocktail reception that is to come very shortly. So please do not worry, I will be very short, and I simply want to make just 5 key remarks. First, the European Union pays great attention to the South China Sea and to the whole Indo-Pacific region as the center of gravity of the world shifts towards the Indo-Pacific. This region creates 60% of global GDP. In addition, 40% of the EU trade passes through Indo-Pacific. Because of the security implications, this region features prominently in the discussions we are having precisely now in Brussels about what we call the EU Strategic Compass. This is a key document that should guide EU action in security and defense for the next 5 to 10 years, once agreed by member states, hopefully in the spring of next year. Earlier this year, in September, we have agreed and issued EU strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. The EU strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific has 7 main priority areas: sustainable and inclusive prosperity, including trade and technological standards, green transition, ocean governance, digital governance and partnership, connectivity, security and defense, and finally, human security, including support to healthcare systems and pandemic preparedness. The security and defense dimension of the strategy includes maritime security and freedom of navigation along the region's sea line of communication, which carry so much of Europe's trade and which are so important for the stability not only of the region itself, but I would also say for the whole world. My second remark, I would like to stress that the EU Indo-Pacific strategy is inclusive of all partners in the region wishing to cooperate with us when our interests coincide. At the same time, European Union will continue to protect our essential interests and promote the values of democracy, human rights, rule of law, working with international partners who share similar approaches. Third, the European Union, which is a regional organization, considers that our main partner in the Indo-Pacific region is ASEAN. We support the principle of ASEAN centrality. We appreciate ASEAN's commitment to effective multilateralism, ASEAN's efforts to build a rules-based regional architecture, and the multilateral anchor that ASEAN provides. We will coordinate our actions under the EU strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific with ASEAN and the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Fourth, I would like to recall that the European Union supports peaceful resolution of disputes around the South China Sea in line with international law, in particular, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, and its dispute settlement mechanism. Therefore, we support the ASEAN-led process towards an effective, substantive, and legally binding code of conduct in the South China Sea. The end product of negotiations should be a fair, balanced, and equitable code of conduct based on a convergence of the interests of all stakeholders. Such code of conduct should not prejudice the interests of third parties. And my fifth and final point, I would like to stress that the European Union is interested not only in supporting principles, but also in concrete, practical cooperation with partners in the Indo-Pacific. In the field of maritime security, we want to conduct more joint naval exercises and port calls with partners. Over the past year, EU Naval Force Somalia Operation Atalanta has already conducted joint exercises in its area of operation with several Indo-Pacific countries, including Djibouti, India, Japan, Republic of Korea, Oman, and Pakistan. We are also looking at launching a new application of our coordinated maritime presence concept in the Indo-Pacific. For the moment, we have this concept applied in the Gulf of Guinea, western coast of Africa. This would allow warships of different EU member states to patrol a given maritime area of interest in a coordinated way while sharing maritime information with each other and with coastal countries. Our member states are expected to take a decision in applying this concept to a certain maritime area of interest, also in case of Indo-Pacific early next year. At the same time, we are keen to provide maritime security capacity building to partners in the Indo-Pacific, including the South China Sea. The goal is to help partners control more effectively their maritime space, thanks to better maritime domain awareness. The EU Critical Maritime Routes in the Indo-Pacific project, CRIMARIO, provides a special software called JORIS that helps partners share information internally between different agencies, as well as across borders and with the relevant regional and international bodies. We also want to keep maritime information fusion centers in different parts of the Indo-Pacific share their information with each other, so they can have a fuller integrated maritime picture. This is all based on EU's own experience of creating a common information sharing environment within national administrations and across borders between member states. Let me add that the European Union is also intensifying cooperation with partners on cybersecurity, counterterrorism, and fight against information manipulation and information interference, also thanks to our Enhancing Security in and with Asia (ESIWA) project. As the event is hosted by the Diplomatic Academy of Viet Nam, let me also say a few words about our bilateral contacts. With Vietnam, we have concluded a framework participation agreement for participation in EU common security and defense policy missions and operations. Under this agreement, we hope very soon to welcome the first ever Vietnamese personnel as members of the EU training mission in the Central African Republic in a few months. In the Indo-Pacific, the Republic of Korea, Australia, New Zealand have also concluded similar framework participation agreements. For instance, the Republic of Korea contributes to the Operation Atalanta, I already mentioned it, of the coast of Somalia, that is focusing on anti-piracy activities. So, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, let me once again restate that the European Union is committed to closer cooperation with partners in the South China Sea and in the whole Indo-Pacific region, in line with our new Indo-Pacific strategy. The South China Sea should be a sea of peace, stability, and prosperity. The European Union is a regional organization based on the rule of law. We seek to promote an open and rules-based regional security architecture based not on unilateral actions, but on multilateral approaches. And I'm sure that all together we can make it also in case of the South China Sea. Mr. President, back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency Pawel Herczynski. For a very short but extremely clear remark on the EU's priority in the Indo-Pacific. And in your remark, we hear a lot of important keywords, which sounds like music to our ears, honestly. Peaceful resolution of disputes, rules-based architecture, the rule of law, supporting ASEAN and taking ASEAN as a key priorities, multilateral approach instead of unilateral one, enhanced maritime security, especially maritime capacity building and coordinated presence in the Indo-Pacific, including the South China Sea. I think all these priorities are very welcoming in the Indo-Pacific and in the South China Sea in particular, and therefore the EU's role is considered to be a very important and key in this region. So, Excellency, watching our keynotes today are not only the embassies, the scholars, the various government agencies in Hanoi. The conference is also attended by the future leaders of the countries and of this region through a Young Leaders Program. At the moment, there are still about 200 people attending online, watching you live as well. So allow me to invite them to pose questions and to interact with you for a couple of minutes, if I may. I would like to ask if anyone in this room would like to have a question to Excellency Mr. Pawel Herczynski. Yes, Excellency Hoàng Anh Tuấn, former Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN and Vice President of the DAV, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sun. Although the questions now is to be asked by the young leaders, but I'm not young any longer. Well, I have two questions for you. One is that before I pose my question, I would like to thank the European Union for supporting ASEAN for the AOIP and ASEAN centrality. My first question is that in the Indo-Pacific, you see there is not only the Indo-Pacific strategy, which was just adopted by the EU. We have also had several other Indo-Pacific strategies by countries like India, Japan, the United States. So how do you synchronize the areas of cooperation priorities, as we have mentioned, with the priorities, and how to cooperate the Indo-Pacific strategies from the other countries which have already been in the regions before you adopted one. And the second one, how do you anticipate the relations between EU and China after the adoption of the Indo-Pacific strategy? There might be some tensions. There might be some perhaps oppositions from China. That is what to be expected. And how do you handle that? And that's I have two questions for you. Thank you.
Excellency, would you like to respond?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for very pertinent two questions. First, let me start by saying that we are all young here. Only the challenges are growing. So on the first question about Indo-Pacific strategies of our partners, yes, we are fully aware of it. Also, our own member states, some of them at least, have their own Indo-Pacific strategies. What we need is clearly international cooperation and dialogue. This is why we have developed or are still developing security and defense dialogues with our key partners in the region. We have an ongoing security and defense dialogue with Republic of Korea, with Japan, and we also have such a dialogue, very long-lasting dialogue with China. And during those dialogues, we extend with our partners our positions, and we try to make sure that even in case there are differences of views, that we, in a very open and transparent way, discuss about those differences. On your second question and our relationship with China, this is based on our China strategy. European Union sees China on 3 levels. First, China is a very important partner of the European Union. There are a lot of issues, also international challenges that we need to work very closely on together with China. This is, for instance, the issue of climate change, a very topical issue after the last COP in Glasgow. China is also our competitor. We compete with China on other issues, and China is also our systemic rival. We see those 3 layers of interactions with China that, of course, call for strengthening a dialogue, for reaching out. We are already preparing the next EU-China summit, and then we have a very well-developed network of different dialogues on different topics, including, as I mentioned, security and defense dialogue, that I have a great pleasure of co-chairing with my Chinese counterpart. We are looking forward to the next edition that should hopefully be held very soon. These dialogues are extremely important, also in a case where there are differences of approaches. What is very important is that we share our views, that we exchange, and that we try to better understand each other's position. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Can I invite the next question, please? Yes, Professor Lanang.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. I would like to raise a question concerning the planned global gateway that the EU just been public recently. And as we all know that several months ago, G7 also issued a broader plan, the B3W, Build Back Better World. So to what extent the global gateway can complement with the B3W, and in that 2 big master plan, what are the role of the Indo-Pacific states in other regions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I'm an expert on security and defense. This is an area where our colleagues from the European Commission are in the lead. What I can say is that, of course, the pandemic situation has created an entirely new reality, and it makes common sense that all international community works as closely together as possible in order to restart the economic development, and in order to leave behind the very sad times of the pandemic as soon as possible, and restart the economic cooperation. This is also linked to connectivity, where the European Union is very active. But I would leave it at this, as I'm honestly not the expert on the subject. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Excellency. We receive a question from an Indian online participant, and the question goes like this. Your Excellency, practical cooperation in maritime sphere is likely to be more effective in the Indo-Pacific. Would you like to elaborate more on sharing maritime information by Information Fusion Center? We have one such near Delhi.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm also very grateful to India for a very active participation in our efforts when it comes to Operation Atalanta. On many occasions, Indian warships were helping the operation by accompanying WFP convoys. We also had very successful maritime security dialogue launched recently with India. Of course, when it comes to maritime security, what is of key is information sharing. Assets, naval assets are very scarce. We know it very well. This is why we have launched a coordinated maritime presence initiative. The idea is for navies of EU member states that are in a particular region to share information with all EU member states. We have started this as a pilot project in Gulf of Guinea, and precisely now our member states are having a discussion about applying this concept also to a certain area of interest in the Indo-Pacific, most probably in the certain part of Indian Ocean. It's also for our member states to decide if this concept will be open to third countries. From my point of view, it makes all the sense. In the case of Gulf of Guinea, as it is a pilot project, for the moment, it's only open to the participation of 27 EU member states. But hopefully, if a decision will be taken by member states to apply this coordinated maritime concept also to Indo-Pacific, to certain part of Indo-Pacific, it will be also open to the participation of third states. But already now, as you know very well, we try to connect different networks that already exist using Crimario and other instruments that we have, including a very good software that we have developed, and we share it with other partners in order for navies of third countries to exchange the information for all of us to have a better situational awareness. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Excellency. We have another question from an online participant. We in ASEAN are struggling to find a united position of just 10 members. So I assume you must have a very fun job of coordinating the positions of 27 members of the European Union. How do you achieve that common position on such important issue as common security and defense policy?
Yes, thank you very much. It is a fun question, but speaking very seriously, when it comes to our common foreign policy and common security and defense policy, we have a rule of unanimity. So we need to have a green light from every single member state in order to proceed. In other policy areas, this rule of unanimity does not apply. There are other arrangements, including QMV. But when it comes to foreign policy and security and defense policy, we have a very strict rule of unanimity. What does it mean? It means that, of course, it is sometimes very challenging to have all 27 member states on board, especially when it comes to very sensitive issues of security and defense. But throughout the years, we have developed a rather complicated, I'm very honest with you, system of consultations We have different layers starting from experts into senior experts, ministerial level, and finally heads of state on government if needed. All these layers can be involved, and I really have very proudly to say that in the vast majority of cases, sometimes unfortunately after long and difficult negotiations, we reach out a common agreement based on our shared values and shared interests. What is extremely important to say is that when the EU speaks in one voice, and because of this unanimity principle, we have the full backing of our 27 member states. So on one hand, it is challenging because it takes time, and sometimes the final position is not as ambitious as some of our member states would wish. But at the end, once we reach an agreement and we have a full buy-in of 27 member states, we know that what we say is fully backed by our 27 member states. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Is there any more question? Yes, Huang, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is Huang from the East Institute. So I have one question, particularly about the Crimerio project that you mentioned in the speech. As far as I understand, the Crimerio project, phase 1 has already been concluded in East Africa, and phase 2 has just been started in Southeast Asia. And my question is there any differences in terms of approach, in terms of principle, in terms of implementations of the Crimerio projects between the two regions? And also, can you give us a little bit of updates on how the Crimerio project is going in Southeast Asia so far, and particularly in Vietnam, if there is any at all? Thank you so much.
Look, I mean, the principles are exactly the same. Again, this comes back to the previous question. This is about creating an environment in which interested member states can participate, share information. We also have developed a special software called JORIS that helps partners share information internally between different agencies, as well as across borders and with the relevant regional and international bodies. So, so I think the concept is exactly the same. Of course, the countries are different, and this is based on our own experience in the European Union, when we are in the process of established exchanges between our own member states. So I count on active participation of all interested countries in this initiative. Back to you, Mr. President.
And if I may, there is one last question from an online participant. He's a researcher at the DAV, which is participating online. What will the EU do to convince its member states to strongly uphold international law, including the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, while maximizing their economic interests with China? And the reason I ask this is because I observe that many EU member states seem to focus on maximizing economic cooperation with China rather than following EU's position to preserve international law, rules-based order, etc.
I mean, here I can be very straightforward. We have a very clear position among EU 27 member states. We are very strongly supporting multilateralism, and we are very strongly supporting rules-based world order. And this, of course, also includes UNCLOS. In our view, this does not mean that we should put our trade relationship with any country at stake. On the contrary, we are also a very strong supporter of economic development and trade relationship. So from our point of view, full respect for international law, including UNCLOS, and the development of trade relationship should be mutually reinforcing and not the contrary. So here we have a very clear-cut position of EU 27 member states. Mr. President, back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Pawel Herczynski, for your time spending with us. We cannot thank you enough to show our appreciation for the interactions you've given to our audiences and for the time that you spare with us today. So on behalf of all of us in this room, as well as attending online, I would like to once again thank you for your time, and I wish you and the EU success in its interactions with the Indo-Pacific and in realizing its vision of an Indo-Pacific that is open and rules-based and with an active EU's role in it. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in Hanoi in person. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for a very interesting discussion. Thank you for all the questions. And of course, I hope that next year's event will be organized already in a much better international environment when it comes to the pandemic, and that would allow even more of us to join you in person in Hanoi. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Excellency.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nguyễn Hùng Sơn. And that is the wrap of day one of the 13th South China Sea International Conference. Thank you once again for all of the distinguished guest excellencies and our online participants for sticking with us from the morning until now. And now for some of the reminders, I would like to invite our delegate to attend the keynote receptions, dinner on the second floor. And for our online participants, see you at 8:30 tomorrow, starting with session 4 on the ASEAN, the Quad, and other regional arrangements. And also, don't forget that we will have a live commentary for the first time ever in the South China Sea series with Associate Professor Nguyễn Thị Lan Anh from the East Institute and Dr. Trần Công Trục, former director of the National Border Committee, at 7 p.m. tonight. So online participants, you can use the same link to attend the live commentaries. Xin cảm ơn quý vị khán giả theo dõi trực tiếp. Phần bình luận trực tiếp thứ hai về các vấn đề pháp lý và lịch sử liên quan đến Biển Đông sẽ diễn ra vào 7 giờ tối nay với sự tham gia của Phó Giáo sư Tiến sĩ Nguyễn Thị Lan Anh và Tiến sĩ Trần Công Trục, nguyên trưởng Ban Biên giới Chính phủ. Xin cảm ơn.
So you are all invited to join us for the cocktail party at the second floor. Just proceed to the end of the corridor and then one floor down, and there we'd like to welcome you, as well as our friends at the cocktail reception. Please proceed there.
Kính thưa